after graduating college. Eventually ended up working at the corporate office at Waffle House, doing purchasing, inventory management, all kinds of things, and eventually ended up working on the energy side with them. That's what got me interested with energy. So I was doing energy and equipment purchasing at that time. Then after 12 years there, started working with Arby's, who at the time eventually bought Wendy's, which was the Wendy's Arby's group. And then Wendy's turned around and sold Arby's.
Restaurants are known for having notoriously razor thin margins. That's the term everybody always says. So, one of the things that your business does is help, protect their profit, right? And to reduce their expenses. So talk to us about how you do that with your business. Welcome back to the next episode of Recipe for Revenue. This is your host, Leah Messina, and I am here today with Walt Taylor. Recipe to Revenue is brought to you by Sinuate Media, the organic marketing company, along with our friends at Intercontinental Beverage Capital, a global advisory firm that's focused on the beverage and consumer packaged goods. Each episode, we bring on interesting people to represent all areas of the food and beverage industry and have them share their stories, their successes, and how they have found the recipe to revenue. Today with Walt, we're going to chat about his business, GWT to Energy, a leading energy consultancy in the restaurant industry. So he's going to share with us some of his stories and how he has found success in his business. One thing that he does, which I thought was super interesting, is how he works with the restaurants to reduce their expenses when it comes to energy and increase their profitability. So when we're talking about the recipe to revenue, not only does he have that for his own business, but he has that for other people's businesses. So this is a very interesting topic to bring to everybody today. So I'm super happy to have Walt here. Walt, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks. So let's just start off, with some of your background. You've worked with some pretty big companies. I know on your CV, you've worked with Arby's, you've worked with Waffle House, and then you went to the independent side and then worked with them, I guess, as a consultant or an advisor. So just kind of share with us your history.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I guess if we want to go all the way back, I started in high school working at Chick-fil-A. So I grew up in Alabama, so Chick-fil-A is real big down here in the South, right?
Oh, yeah.
So grew up in high school working there. After graduating college, eventually ended up working at the corporate office at Waffle House, doing purchasing, inventory management, all kinds of things, and eventually ended up working on the energy side with them. That's what got me interested with energy. So I was doing energy and equipment purchasing at that time. Then after 12 years there, started working with Arby's, who at the time eventually bought Wendy's, which was the Wendy's Arby's group. And then Wendy's turned around and sold Arby's. That was quite a fun time during that time. But ultimately ended up going out and being an energy consultant, running my own business. And so we've been in business for November will be 10 years.
Congratulations. Yeah, that's such a milestone.
Yeah, that was a great milestone. And basically taking the learnings from those different companies that I worked with on how I helped them at the time to reduce their energy and utility expenses, doing the same thing with other companies. And we've had the great fortune to work with a lot of restaurant companies throughout the country. We also work with a little bit of retail. We're going to have our first store in Mexico coming up later this year that we'll be working with. And we're already in various ways working from Puerto Rico to Guam and Canada, as well as obviously the US. So
I have so many questions for you. Okay, let's see. Where do we start? First of all, how do you get your clients out of the country? Mexico, Guam, how do they hear about you?
So really it's clients that we have in the US that are expanding.
Very cool.
So that's how
that makes sense.
Yeah. So yeah. we don't actively try to reach out to Mexico. I don't know any Spanish. So we'll have to learn a little bit about that. Our call center, our people there know some Spanish, so I think it'll work out just fine.
Yeah, very good. So do you have to travel to those locations when you're working on a project then?
Well, yeah, the one in Mexico is in Cancun, so I guess I have to go.
Oh, you have to try it. Yes, you have to be there on site, quality control and all.
But yes, I do visit quite a many of the sites. But depending on if it's a chain location and things like that, not that every store is the same, because we all know that every location, even though they look the same on the outside, are completely different when we go inside. But we do visit quite a lot. I can't say that I've been to all, say, 700 sites that we manage, but been to probably 100 or so.
Yeah, yeah, very good. So, do you work with the restaurants on new builds, retrofitting? What do you tend to see?
Yeah, so we help them with new builds and new construction if they're looking for, hey, we don't know which utility company services this area and things like that. We'll help them set that up and manage that for them. We also, for existing locations, if we're installing some equipment for them, like for instance, we do have, we'll call them smart thermostats, but they're a lot smarter,
Hmm.
standard smart thermostat, but an
Yeah.
energy management system that we'll install and retrofit into existing locations or put it in a new location, depending on how that goes,
Hmm.
just to help them manage their walk-in temperatures, their comfort in the restaurant for both their employees and their guests, manage their lights, turning those on and off when they should be. That's a big portion of managing their energy costs is just managing those things that their operators don't really need to worry about. Those things should operate in the background. They should be taking care of their guests and their
Right. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. They're there for the experience, but the part of the experience is feeling comfortable in the environment. So that's where you come in. So then, restaurants are known for having notoriously razor thin margins. That's the term everybody always says. So, one of the things that your business does is help, protect their profit, right? And to reduce their expenses. So, talk to us about how you do that with your
Yeah,
business.
so it's a few different ways. We've had sort of like a three-pronged stool that we, talk to them about. One may just be just consulting, just giving them advice,
Hmm.
reviewing their utility bills, going to a store, maybe doing an energy audit, and just giving them some feedback and say, maybe change your lights, maybe convert to Energy Star equipment, or whatever the case may be. The other one, as I mentioned, is our energy management systems that we'll put in, and the thing that for us we are agnostic to the brand of energy management systems. There's several out there. So we try
Hmm.
to fit the best system for the client, whether it's some huge, restaurant location, or maybe it's just, a breakfast place like a Dunkin' or something like that. They don't require
Hmm.
something quite as sophisticated. So we
Yeah.
try to manage that. And then we also have a call center, and our call center manages those energy management systems. So they'll talk to the restaurant employees and say, hey, it's not comfortable. Can you help me with that? And we'll let them know if their equipment's not working correctly, or maybe it's just make a minor change, or maybe, hey, we're doing inventory tonight. So can you keep the lights in the air on another 2 hours? We'll make those all
Hmm.
adjustments for them.
Yeah.
But reviewing those electric bills, finding outliers, let's find out why a restaurant may be not acting quite like the other ones. A lot of times there's legitimate reasons, right? But
Yeah.
sometimes it's just a matter of it's different personnel. And so by us managing those things that they don't need to be worried about, like I said, lighting, air conditioning, walk-ins, things like that, we can
Hmm.
reduce those outliers. Now, obviously, sales has an impact. Orientation of the store to sunlight may have an impact on
Sure.
those things. There's no exact match to any other sort, exactly due to age or whatever. But
Hmm.
how the equipment performs, if it's running but not cooling, an air conditioner, then it's just wasting energy and it's not actually
Yeah.
helping. So the
Yeah.
equipment that we use monitors that and lets us know to let them know that they've got an issue.
Yeah. So as part of the consulting that you're doing, then helping that restaurant come up with their protocol of how they're going to operate across all of their locations, then temperature wise, type of equipment that works best for them.
Yeah, and I'll tell you exactly. And I will say that some things have changed since COVID as employee comfort has become a bigger concern over time
Sure.
since that time. Used to years ago, I'm pretty old. So years ago, people would say you're working in the kitchen, it's going to be warm, right?
Mm.
That's part of the restaurant industry. Now, exactly. These days, employees are not so they don't prefer to hear that now, correct? So,
Yeah.
we're a little bit. We'll keep the temperatures a little cooler than we used to in the kitchen. Obviously, they want to maintain good staff, and it's hard to keep people these days. So, the last thing we
Hmm.
want anyone to do is be upset because it's too hot.
Yeah. Oh,
So
that's
yeah,
interesting.
so that's one of the things that's changed a little bit with COVID. But the other thing really is managing that when they're closed, that they don't have anything running that shouldn't be running. It's not that the air conditioner
Hmm.
shouldn't run at all when the restaurant's closed because you don't want it to get 95 degrees or 20 degrees, right? But
Right.
it should go back, from let's say it's 72 in the kitchen back to maybe 78 in the kitchen. So just
Yeah.
that 6 degrees difference can save as much as 10% on your electric bill. So,
Right.
and the more the restaurant is not open, the more opportunity we have to save. So if you're just a lunch and dinner place, then we have more opportunity to save. If you're 20,
Of course. Yeah.
a little bit less of an opportunity because you're running 24/7, but there
Yeah.
still is an opportunity because I don't know how many times you've gone in a restaurant, but I've gone, and often, especially with my wife, she's like, I've got to bring a sweater because,
Yes.
right?
You just know that. You need to bring a sweater just in case it's freezing. So this happened to me on Saturday. I did not have one, and it had just rained. And I was like, this is cold. Can we hurry up and finish and leave? Which is not what the restaurant wants.
Yeah, we do have we have a saying called the CCC rule. It's cool for customer comfort.
Mm.
But again, after COVID, we're tilting back more to a little bit to the employees now because they are running around and they're bussing tables, they're serving
Mm-hmm.
customers and all that. So it's not that they are obviously working hard and getting warmer than the people sitting there enjoying.
Of course. Right. Yeah. So you mentioned running 24 hours. And so I hear that Waffle House is notorious for staying open regardless of if there's a hurricane or natural disaster, that they always stay open. So I imagine that's a different level of commitment that they have.
Oh yeah.
Did you notice that when you were there?
Obviously, I was actually there during Katrina.
Mm-hmm.
And so FEMA, the Emergency Management Association, they do have a Waffle House index that, if Waffle House is closed, then everybody needs to be out. If they're open, you can probably go back
Yeah.
in. But yeah, so Waffle House is 24/7, 365. Christmas is usually the biggest day.
Yeah.
So that was enjoyable. You're working so hard during that time, especially I worked at the food distribution center, and we were
Mm-hmm.
just getting food out, like just tractor loads of food going out all the time. So it was a
Yeah.
lot of fun, a very fast moving organization, just nothing but good things to say about Waffle House.
Yeah.
A lot of time there.
So your call center, is that a 24/7 operation as well?
No, not 24/7. It's about 18 to 19 hours, depending on if it's a weekday or weekend.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a problem, like the air conditioner not working correctly at 3 o'clock in the morning, you're not going to call a technician out at 3. So
Sure.
we'll get them first thing the next business day, 7 a.m., depending on if it's East Coast or West Coast, and let them know that they have an issue. The same with a walk-in cooler. It's not going to go from 0 degrees to 90 degrees in
Right.
4 hours. So we've never had it open 24 hours, but 19 hours is a good portion of the day. So we're around
Sure.
most.
That's a pretty healthy chunk of the day.
Yeah.
And are you able to manage remotely for some of these systems with your smart controls?
Yeah, that's absolutely. We only monitor remotely. Everything's done
Mm-hmm.
remote. And so it's just as simple as logging into the website or logging into the software of the system and
Mm-hmm.
seeing all those. It's my wife used to ask me, we'd go out and she's, don't you manage this restaurant? She said, yeah, well, it's a little cold. Can you change the temperature? So I pull out my phone, adjust the temperature a little bit.
All the power is in your hands.
So we've had some fun like that. But
Yeah.
yeah, so everything's done remotely, and that's so all the systems can send us reports, and then we every day we're letting people know about different issues. As you can imagine, all the locations across the country, there's something going on literally every day at some location.
So, do you have restaurants then that are, I'm sure some of them are very on top of all their data, and then maybe some kind of leave it in your hands. Do you
Yes,
experience both ends?
yes. So as you can imagine, the bigger the organization, the less they want to know everything, right? They just want to know when
Hmm.
things are going bad. Just tell me the bad things. And then we'll have a smaller
Yep.
organization that says, oh, can you look at this? And how is this restaurant running versus this restaurant? The air
Hmm.
conditioning seems to be running more. Can you tell me exactly how long it's running? Of course we can. But
Yeah.
yeah, larger organizations just want to know the bad things, right? Just tell me when things are going wrong. And smaller organizations, they have a little bit more time to kind of dig into the detail.
Yeah, that's it. That definitely, I think, translates across industries. But in a restaurant where you're dealing with so many customers at once, it kind of amplifies it really, because you could have 25 customers all complaining at one time that it's too cold, right? And then we have to do something about this right now.
Exactly. Exactly. And sometimes it's a minor change that we can make for them. But sometimes, unfortunately, the equipment's not working correctly and they'll have to be tech out.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you think restaurants, again, the cost to even build out a restaurant or renovate is pretty substantial for most business owners. How do they strike that balance between investing in energy efficient technologies and the long-term savings that they might receive?
Sure. So one of the things that whenever we're recommending something, whether it's an energy management system, a lighting change, it may be a new refrigerator, whatever it may be, we want to do a return on investment analysis. And we
Hmm.
know that restaurants, in 2 to 3 years, that magical, hey, if we can get a return on investment in 2 to 3 years, that's important to them. I often ask them, do any of the stocks they invest in have a 50% return on investment?
That's a good point.
And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, well, that's what you're asking for. And
Yeah.
that's a big ask. But depending on how well or not well they're performing in those restaurants, we can hit those marks. And usually 2 to 3 years is we won't usually recommend something that's going to be a longer than a 3 year return on investment. So that's key for us.
Yeah. And then, in that like 3-year time period, would you say then like, is the technology changing so much that it's something that they would need to, implement new systems in there? Like how often do they need to kind of have their actual technology updated?
So it really depends on how nerdy they are, for lack of a better term, right? For the most part, a thermostat's a thermostat. It's a thermostat, right? It doesn't matter if it was built 10 years ago or last year. It's still a
Yeah.
thermostat and it still does thermostat things. But there are some people that like to see, fancy digital thermostats and think that's going to make a difference. And we're like, that it's still just a thermostat. It's pretty, but it's still
Yeah.
just a thermostat. So you don't need to invest in something like that. But for the most part, several years ago, I want to say 9 to 10 years ago, lighting was a big change as we're moving from incandescent to CFL to LED. That was a big change. And
Yeah.
now most everyone is already to LED or very close to LED. We have some older stores that don't have LED, but for the most part, parking lot LED lights were a big hit. They came out because that is a huge investment because you were going from, say, a 600 or 300 watt light, 2 lights on each pole, 10 poles in the parking lot, to now you're going to LED lights that can do a better job of lighting the parking lot and are maybe even 20% of the energy usage. So those were a big investment. As far the government is doing more and more to increase the efficiency of air conditioners. So more than likely, restaurant owners are not wanting to go to that more expensive air conditioner. They want to stick with the older ones. But the regulations and other things are requiring us to go to more and more advanced controls, more advanced conditioners that do have a wide variety of things. They may slow the fan down and speed the fan up, and that requires a different set of controls than the on-off version, right? So it really just depends on what the technology is. But the actual controls that we work with, for the most part, are basic thermostats, and those we've got them out there that have been 10 years old at this point. So they don't, they will, lightning hits it or something like that. Of course, they replace it, and sometimes they'll break, but all of our equipment has a 5-year warranty on it. So, so we stand behind it.
Yeah, right. Excellent. So do you work then with, there's so many like Energy Star credits and things along those lines. Like states have different programs to encourage businesses and obviously residential as well to use energy efficient technologies and equipment. So is that something that you, are helping restaurants to implement in their restaurants as well?
If there's one available, and then we'll guide them on how to apply for those. We don't actually do the applications for them, but we guide them on how to do the applications. As more and more technologies come around, those rebate opportunities are smaller and smaller. They were incentivizing people to change to LED and other things. Now that those are almost all common, right?
Yeah.
There's less opportunities for those, but there's still some out there.
Yeah, it seems with solar panels, is that something that did you get involved with as well?
We definitely look at solar as an option. The biggest thing is where would you put them at the restaurant? The roof, you have to maintain a certain distance between the air conditioners and the exhaust fans and all that. So a lot of times there's nowhere to put solar panels on the roof. So you may want to do, like if you're in Arizona, you may want to do parking canopies with solar panels. But then the operator always asks, well, the delivery guy is going to hit the canopy. And so you're like, okay, so so there's some pros and cons to all
they don't need that problem.
Right now, big thing is EV charging. We want to be one of the first ones to have EV charging available. Does it bring in additional customers? In California, as you build new locations now, it's going to be required to put in EV charging. So that's a big thing right now. Wind, you can't really put a big windmill on top of your restaurant. They have come up with some smaller designs, but again, the roof, there's just not a lot of room on the roof of most restaurants to do that. But it's certainly an option. And with the tax incentives, you can probably get the payback down to 5 years or so for solar.
Yeah. So, are you seeing that when restaurants are coming to you, are they trying to solve an energy problem, or are they trying to solve
usually it's an expense
problem?
We were talking to a potential client just today, and I said, just want to make sure, understand what your goals are. He said, we want to save money. I said, okay, that's
Yeah.
as long as we understand, because some
Yeah.
restaurants, it's more of a
Mhm.
sustainability thing that they want to do. We want to have a message to our customers that we're doing
Mhm.
things to save water, that we're doing things to save electricity, or whatever it may be. And right. So
Sure.
that's one
Part
of
of
the
their
questions that we
values as an
ask with all potential
organization.
clients is, what's the
Yeah.
main goal that you want to have? Most of them is, we
Mhm.
want to go green by saving
Mhm.
green. Right.
Yeah.
So
Right.
we help
Makes
them with
sense
those
too.
things, and even if it's just like changing the lighting or doing the energy management system, I tell them, that
Mhm.
is a sustainability move in itself. If you're conserving, then that's a
Mhm.
message that you can send out to everybody, is, hey, that we are looking at ways to reduce our usage. I did want to step back and say, you mentioned solar panels. One of the big
Right.
things right now is community solar. You've heard of
Yeah.
that. So that's where a
I
state,
haven't. Yeah.
like
Tell us what
Illinois,
that
let's
is.
say, they have some land made available where people put a bunch of solar panels. So if you've been driving down the interstate and you see this just land full of solar panels,
Mhm.
yeah, so a
Yeah,
solar
a
farm.
solar farm, we
So
call
what's
that in New
happened
Mexico. Yeah.
is they will have people invest in that solar farm, we'll call it. And so to do that, you may pay a
Mhm.
little bit more for that, but you'll get a credit back on your utility bill for helping them to build that solar farm. That way, you don't have to worry about putting solar on your
Yeah.
facility, but you can take advantage of solar. Did the
Yeah.
solar power really get
Excellent.
back to you? Probably not, but you did invest in that, and so you can stake some claim.
Yeah, and that's
Exactly.
where the community part of it comes in, right? And you're still being powered
Yeah.
by it, so you're all chipping in. So let's take a step back to and talk a little bit more about your business and how you've grown it over the years. So you're 10 years in. Just gonna talk to us about the journey of how you launched it and
Yeah.
have
So,
seen the
like I said,
success that you
really,
have today.
it was a combination of multiple things. I did this for so many years in the restaurant industry and loved that more than anything else that I was doing, more than the purchasing part, more than the food distribution part.
Mhm.
So that's what really pushed me into the energy consulting side. And what I really saw was a gap, is
Mhm.
that there were a bunch of people that were doing energy consulting, but they didn't know anything about restaurants. And, restaurants are a manufacturing
Mhm.
facility inside, let's say it's a 2,000 square foot building. But people were trying to take something from an
Yeah.
office building and make it fit into a restaurant. And they don't understand, as all us former restaurant employees know, that restaurant employees can tear up an anvil. And they may, that might be the goal at the end of the day, is, I'm going to break this. But so what I decided to
Sure.
do was go out in the market and look for things that were simple, the KISS method. And so let's find a simple product
Mhm.
that will do the things that we want it to do. And that's really how I got the
Yeah.
company started. My father and I actually started the company 10 years ago. He had some experience with mechanical things. And so that it was really just out of the desire to help just restaurants. We have gone into some retail since then. Retail's
Yeah.
easier than restaurants, but a little bit more demanding
Mhm.
in other ways. So that's been an interesting curve to
Yeah.
learn.
What's been more demanding? I'm curious.
Well, we have one of our clients is a luxury brand, and they just have a lot of requests. Yeah,
A lot of special, yeah, they need things, I'm sure, a certain way.
and they're absolutely the things to ask for. We just didn't know that as much when we first got started with them, but we've learned a lot working with them, and
Gotcha.
they've been a great client to work with.
Mhm.
But regardless, so we
Yeah.
got started that way. Having been in the restaurant industry for probably 20 years at that point, I already knew a bunch of people in the industry. So we had one restaurant client that were willing to take a
Mhm.
chance with us. And so it was, Lord willing, that's how we got started. And it was great. So we had a national account
Yeah.
day one, and installed energy management systems, did all kinds of different things for them.
Excellent.
Like I said, we review their bills. We look for different parts of the country. You can be on a different electric rate. And so what we did is we looked at the bills and find out, is there a better
Mhm.
electric rate that we can have someone on in this state versus, some other electric rate. For instance, if you're in Georgia and you're a large enough restaurant company, there is a food and beverage electric rate that you can be on, which is better than just a standard electric rate. So we're always looking for
Mhm.
those optimal rates for our
Yeah.
clients in every state. Not every state has that. Georgia's a little bit more business friendly than some states. So
Yeah.
they have some
Yes,
exciting
I
rates
hear.
that you can kind of bounce in between. But so that's one of the main things we
Yeah.
do, is looking for those optimal rates to be on. And then obviously in some states, whether it's Georgia for natural
Mhm.
gas, Texas for electricity, and there's a wide range. where the electricity or natural gas is deregulated. So we can actually go out there and get people to bid on our restaurant clients' energy. And so we can get them, lower electricity rates or lower gas rates by the open market where it's available in some states. So that's been another exciting thing. We use a reverse auction process to do that. So we basically say, we have this much load to give you, and we have people competing for that load.
Yeah. So restaurant that is looking to come to you and say, we're looking for ways to save money on what we're spending. You do an audit and analysis, and then from there make those kinds of recommendations.
Are you in a deregulated state, what your regulated state, all those different things, how much you're open, how much you're closed. There's a bunch of different questions to ask. And then there's some things that we help our clients do that are not energy related. They may have a location that's in a high crime district. So we'll make sure the lights stay on, the parking lots stay on all night. And then we let them know if employees may want to close the store down a little early than they're supposed to. So we'll know when they're turning the lights off and just give the owner, the management team a heads up. Hey, they can close about an hour. So if that happens occasionally. But, it's all driven around the client and what they want. We have some, I don't think I mentioned, we have some clients that they don't want the employees to manage the thermostat at all. Don't let them touch it or
That's how I feel about my kids touching the thermostat in my house. Yeah.
And then we have some clients, you can let them adjust it, 3 or 4 degrees up or down throughout the day, but at night, please reset it to our corporate state. So those are all the different things that we ask our clients about and to make sure that we're in sync with what their goals are. And sometimes it's really asking a lot of questions because they just know they want to save money. We just really have to make sure that they understand what's possible and what's feasible because almost anything's possible, but is it really feasible?
Sure. Yeah. Yes. What are the limitations that you have to work within? So when you look back at the last 10 years and you look, forward to where the business is going, what has been your personal recipe?
For me, it's been more about referrals. We've done the conventions, we've done the marketing, we've done a bunch of different things, but in the end, it was always referral. And that, I don't know how true that is for anybody else. We looked at, you may have heard of, what is it, Donald Miller Story Brand. I think we were looking at doing that, and we're like, well, that's really a B2C, not a B2B. And then in the end, we just said, it's really about referrals, getting our current clients to refer us to their friends in the industry. And so that's been the key. We talked to one of our clients. We had lunch a few weeks back, and I said, I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you doing business with us. It means a lot to us. And he said, Walt, as long as you keep making us look good, we're going to keep doing business with you. I was like, hey, that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, that's an endorsement. Yeah, that's worth its weight in gold. Do you have a referral process that you use? Like, do you specifically ask them for referrals at a certain interval, or
more or less it's organic? But if we hear that, hey, we also own this other brand, or we have a relationship with this other brand, then I'll say, would you mind introducing us? But for the most part, we let that happen organically. I want to make sure that our clients know that they are the most important to us, and so as long as we keep them happy, then they'll recommend us to someone.
Yeah. That's probably the best way you could do business is, make clients happy and let them talk, positive word of mouth. Well, Walt, what do you see? Any trends that you want to share with listeners about where energy is going and how any last tips for restaurants to save money?
Yeah. So, I'd say some of the biggest things that are happening right now are in California, as you can imagine, from an energy perspective. I've already mentioned EVs required at new locations. As long as you have 26 more parking spot places, you will need at least one EV charger. And then, obviously the minimum wage has been a big issue out there. And so that actually has an impact on us because there's less capital to invest in the things that we're trying to help them with, right? And so we have to be aware of that. We have to be smart about the things that we recommend to them because of those things. But I would say the biggest thing that we see is from a sustainability standpoint, people are wanting more and more to be able to say that we are doing the things, to be good to the planet, for lack of a better term. And so what we've had to kind of learn how to do is allow them to share what they're doing in a way that it's conducive to that story.
Yeah. So do you help them with that?
We do. So we'll tell them, hey, look,
figure out how to do that.
Utilizing these different things, you've taken 600 cars off the road, or whatever language they would like to have it.
we know exactly how much it is.
Yeah.
But some may want cars off the road, trees planted, whatever it may be. The language may be different, but it's not only important to their customers. We're seeing that their employees are asking for these things as well.
Sure. Yes. Especially, I think, for the younger generation, as they're coming into the business world, are wanting and expecting companies to have that certain level of commitment and choosing where to work.
That's probably the future of all this, is how do we wrap that up around the sustainability message? And I think that's going to have probably as much or more than the cost saving.
Yeah. Excellent tips. So, Walt, thank you so much for joining me today on Recipe to Revenue. I'm with Walt Taylor. And if you're listening, whether it's on YouTube, you can watch our videos there. You can also download the podcast on Apple Music, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and your favorite podcasting platform. Walt, before we leave, just let everybody know where they can find you.
Sure. It's just www.gwt2, the number 2, energy.com.
All right. Thanks so much.